So in the 60s, I said, yeah. So listen, what do they know?
Way
No, not way, just a tap. Oh,
So-
yeah, so he's just sleeping his walking. And singing and screaming.
Finding jobs for further practical.
Well, he did a little bit, but I do do a little bit. He'll do the, fixing of the wall, and he'll do the painting.
Oh, the wow.
Yeah, and the ceiling too.
What about the
Yeah, that's minor. But the wallpaper, he'll fix the wall and he'll paint. Some of the nice ones, like.
Yeah. There's no any other way to this somewhere.
Yeah. So you take that.
Oh, yeah.
So I scrape it all first. And then scraper and scrape it all.
How much do you have that so far? Halfway?
I live in the.
All right, good morning, everyone. We will get started here. We are on lesson 8. Lesson 8, which is page 15. Lesson 8, page 15. And we are in 1 Samuel 22, verses 1 through 5. Okay, last couple of weeks, we spent quite a bit of time on chapter 21. So hopefully we don't have any pending questions or comments from that. So let's just jump right into this week. This week we are going to read, let's just start with the first 5 verses of chapter 22. Just the first 5 verses. So anyone can read chapter 22, verses 1 through 5. Just to start us off.
David therefore departed from there and escaped to the cave in Adullam. So when his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him. So he became captain over them, and there were about 400 men with him. Then David went from there to Mizpah of Moab, and he said to the king of Moab, please let my father and mother come here with you, till I know what God will do for me. So he brought them before the king of Moab, and they dwelt with him all the time that David was in the stronghold. Now the prophet of God said to David, do not stay in the stronghold, depart and go to the land of Judah. So David departed and went to the forest of Erech.
Great. All right, let's look at question 7. There's a couple of things here, so we'll just dissect it, see how long it takes us to get through this. It says, when you consider the rest of the chapter, do you think it was wise for David's family to come to him at the cave of Adullam? Explain who else came to him. Now, this keeps going on from 6 to 23. I'm going to break this up into 3 readers, just so we can grab the full story. But before I went into that, I just wanted to get just this first 5 verses, because this is the main structure. In this verse number 1 and number 2, we know David is one of the biblical characters. We know the location is the cave of Adullam, and who else is here? Say it again. His father and who else? When his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And then verse 2, who else? Everybody who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, everyone who was discontented gathered to him. So he became a captain over them. And there were about how many people? Well, how many men with him? 400 men were met with him, right? Then he went to Moab and he said, let my father and mother come here with you till I know what God will do for him. But a prophet came in verse 5 and told him to do what? Don't stay in the stronghold, depart. Okay, now let's read. Someone read for us and we'll just go back to back. Somebody read verse 6 through 8. Somebody read verse 9 through 19. And then somebody read 20 through 23. So someone read 6 through 8. Next person will read 9 through 19. And then the last person will read 20 through 23 of chapter 22. So 6 through 8, 9 through 19, and 20 through 23.
Now Saul heard that David and his men had been discovered, and Saul's spear in hand was seated under the tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah, with all his officials standing around him. Saul said to them, listen, men of Benjamin, will the son of Jesse give all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make all of you commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? Is that why you have all conspired against me? No one tells me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. None of you is concerned about me or tells me that my son has incited my servant to lie in wait for me as he does today.
But Doeg the Edomite, who was standing with Saul's officials, said, I saw the son of Jesse come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub of Anak. Ahimelech inquired of the Lord for him. He also gave him provisions in the sword of Goliath the Philistine. Then the king sent for the priest Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, and all the men of his family who were the priests at Nob. And they all came to the king. Saul said, listen now, son of Ahitub. Yes, my lord, he answered. Saul said to him, why have you conspired against me, you and the sons of Jesse, giving him bread and a sword and inquiring of God for him, so that he has rebelled against me and lies in wait for me as he does today? Ahimelech answered the king, who of all your servants is as loyal as David, the king's son-in-law, captain of your bodyguard and highly respected in your household? Was that day the first time I inquired of God for him? Of course not. Let not the king accuse your servant or any of his father's family, for your servant knows nothing at all about this whole affair. But the king said, you will surely die, and he will let you and your whole family. Then the king ordered the guards at his side, turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because they too have sided with David. They knew he was fleeing, yet they did not tell him. But the king's officials were unwilling to raise a hand to strike the priests of the Lord. The king then ordered God, you turn and strike down the priests. But God, the Edomite, turned and struck them down. That day he killed 85 men who wore the linen ephod. He also put the sword, Nob, the town of the priests, with its men and its women, its children and infants, and its cattle, donkeys, and sheep.
But one son of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abishar, escaped and fled after David. Abishar told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. And David said to Abishar, I knew on that day, when Doeg the Edomite was there, and he would surely kill Saul. I had brought him to death of every person in your father's household. Stay with me, do not be afraid, for he will seek my life and your life, since you are taken.
Okay, this is a sad and deranged situation. Let's just go through this quickly so we can get to our question number 7. Saul finds out that David is where he was the whole chapter of 21, because now we're about to bring back Ahimelech and some other characters. Remember last week we talked about the sword of Goliath and those sort of things. The other key player to look at this is this person, Doeg, D-O-E-G, the Edomite. He's going to do the bidding of Saul when others are not going to. When we get back to Ahimelech, which is in verse number 11, the king had sent to call Ahimelech the priest, the son of Etub, and all of his father's house, the priests who were in Nob, and they all came to the king. And Saul said, "Hear now, son of Etub. Here I am, my lord." Then Saul said, "Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, and that you have given him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me?" Verse 14, Ahimelech said, "And who among all your servants is as faithful as David? Who is the king's son-in-law? Who goes at your bidding and is honorable in your house? Do I then begin to inquire of God for him? Far be it from me. Let not the king impute anything to a servant or any in the house of my father, for your servant knew nothing of all of this, little or much." The king said, "You shall surely die, you and all your father's house." The king said to the guard, "Turn and kill the prophets of the Lord, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew when he had fled and did not tell it to me." But the servants of the king would not lift their hands to strike the priests. And then we have Doeg come in, or Doeg, "You turn and kill the priest." So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck the priest and killed on that day 85 men who wore a linen ephod. So let's get back to question 7. When you consider the rest of the chapter, everything that we just read, do you think it was wise for David's family to come to him at the cave of Adullam? Explain. We already did the last part. Who else came to him? So now we're in back of verse 1 through 5, right? But now that we know everything that happened throughout this carnage that happens afterwards, what do you feel about the people that rallied to where David was in the cave of Adullam in verse 1 of chapter 22? Was that a good idea or a bad idea?
Turned out to be a good idea.
Because Saul was a step behind David, right? And where he was in chapter 21, David left from there already. Saul comes, and long story short, some people didn't want to kill. One guy took the killing, and they killed 85 priests, and it was just a bloodbath based off of the help that they had given to David. So it looks like some backdrop story that we get in verses 1 through 5, that David's father's household, his mother, his father, his brothers, and these distressed people over tax people, people who are in debt, people who are discontented, those people came to David, and now David is a captain over those people. Let's just call them the forgotten or the downtrodden, right? These are his family members, and these are the people in the nation that are downtrodden. Now it looks like David is a step ahead of Saul, right? Which proves to be a good thing, because now where he is, Saul is one step behind, and we're going to see that just throughout this story as we go through Samuel. Saul is always a step behind. He's never his plan never comes to fruition, obviously, because David becomes king. Anything else with that?
My footnote calls them all outlaws.
Oh.
By now outlaws.
Good, yeah, outlaws, downtrodden, the outcast. That's a good interpretation.
They became a military power.
Good. Okay, and then it was 400 men here. Just think of soldiers here, so that's good. Yes.
I think it was a good idea for David's family to go, because Saul is paranoid, and he's thinking that everybody's against him. And because this is David's family, it stands to reason that in his paranoia, he would think that these people would also be against him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's good that they went down there, and I think it was great that Saul went to the king of Moab to have his family there protected.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't say everybody, all 400 people to be protected, just his family, because Saul doesn't know about the other 400 people.
Right.
You know, they're not that close to him. These are just people who are displaced by society,
Mm-hmm.
and who see in David, I think through God, that he is somebody who they can rally around, somebody who's out for them. You know? If we go over to where Saul was trying to rouse his own people to say, hey, is he going to give you guys vineyards and so on? He said, I'm going to give you guys these things.
Yeah.
And it stands to reason that he has been card favoring his people. He has been giving people he considered to be close to him these things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's so many people in debt and stretched, etc. So they see that Saul is not for them. So if Saul's not for them, it makes sense to me that they think that maybe David is for them. And so they rally around David. But his family's there, not so much just to rally around David. We don't know how much they believe in him. Still, his brothers anyway. But they know that they're better off outside of Saul's purview.
Yep. Yeah, this is good, right? Because what he does is he separates this group. He gives the vulnerable people to safety, right? But then he takes the people who are vulnerable from society, but they can fight. He's going to use that animosity, that downtrodden spirit, and turn them into fighters. That's why it's going to be hard for Saul to get to David, because David already had the people. And then the people who are going to start rallying with David as his closest group, ready for war, are people that David is going to have saved emotionally, financially, spiritually, all of these things before he becomes king. So it's going to make his inner circle very tight. And they're going to be following a guy who is a real fighter. And David is going to be able to turn these people who are outlaws or outcasts in the society into a formidable force. And that's what he did. But as a good leader, he separates those who are vulnerable physically from those who can fight, right? The vulnerable, hey, my mom, dad, maybe some other people go here, and then the rest of us will fight and we'll hold down what will come forth. So this question 7, I agree with both of those comments. It turned out to be a good idea because God only knows what would have happened if they were lingered on. Okay, this next section, questions 8 through 11, this goes to what we were just reading in 22. So we can now move past the first 5 verses. Now we're just 6 through 23, the rest of the chapter. Look at question 8. What impression do you get of Saul at this time? Does he show characteristics that would encourage strong loyalty to him? Right? This is the 6 through 23. This is him saying, is David going to give you vineyards? This is him going to Ahimelech. This is him ordering the killing of the priest. This is him telling Doeg to kill the priest. This section, what do we think about this? His characteristics. Let's just quickly assess him at this point of the story. What are some characteristics that we would attribute to his behavior in verses 6 through 23? Just Saul, only Saul for right now. Good characteristics, bad characteristics, good leadership, poor leadership. Yes, go ahead.
Other than him being very aggressive, like full of vengeance. And I would say disloyal because even though they're priests, he didn't care.
Yeah.
Even his own men he asked to kill, so they understood that no, we're not going to touch the priest of the Lord.
Yeah.
So very full of rage.
Yeah, look at verse 17. Turn and kill the priests of the Lord. He even mentioned God because their hands also is with David, right? Not because they did something wrong against the Lord, right? Maybe we entertain that, but because they were with David and because they knew when he fled and did not tell it to me. But the servants of the king would not lift their hands to strike the priests of the Lord. And then go up to what he said to Ahimelech, verse 13. Why have you conspired against me? Always about him. You and the son of Jesse, is that you have given him bread and a sword and have what? Inquired to who? Why did you inquire to God for him? What? What is he talking about? Right? Like this doesn't make any sense, right? There's no reason from knowing what we know all the way back to Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy about the structure of the priesthood. Last week we were talking about Ahimelech's family tree, and even with Samuel and the establishment of Saul as king and the structure and all of these things that we know to be true, right? There's no reason at all for any of this to be said this way because it's nothing about doing something spiritually wrong, which would make sense. But for some reason, in choosing sides. So what in the law that we have seen thus far would warrant death, right? This is a big deal. This is not, hey, you're removed from your post or, hey, you did something wrong. Literally, he wants them to kill these priests because they consulted with God and helped David out instead of helping him. So characteristic, if we had to look at it from a leadership standpoint, is what? From a spiritual leadership. What are his characteristics as a spiritual leader? Because he's supposed to be leading the people spiritually, right? There's no separation from church and state in this nation right here. So what are his spiritual characteristics? Politically, we just spoke about. What are his spiritual characteristics?
Yeah, straight so far away from God. He really didn't have a spiritual relationship with God either at that point. And then I find it interesting when he says, the priest of the Lord. So he goes us,
Yeah.
You priest of the
Yeah.
Lord, you're doing all of this, you're conspiring against me to help David. And it's just like it shows you how mentally ill that he was, and spiritually, again, he was so far away from God. God wasn't on his mind at all. And it shows you like he's defined at that point. And there was nothing else I was going to bring him back.
Yeah, he has so much hate in his heart. He's establishing a us versus them. People who with me and people with David, right? And even he's putting the people that with God and people that with David on the same opposing side, right? So his spiritual characteristics are completely broken. Good point, yes.
So he was told by Samuel that the kingdom would be taken from him.
Mhm.
He knew that God had already turned his back on him.
Mhm.
So I think that it is in his mindset. God was already against him.
Mhm.
There was nothing else, right?
Yep.
So yeah, there is the servants of the Lord, which means that they too are against him.
Mhm.
Inquiring to God means God is going to tell him something against him.
Mhm.
So right now in his mind, it's all about him. It has nothing to do with the country. He's considering his own interest, not the country's interest. And we've seen that through history. We've seen that today.
Mhm.
So it is not unusual for somebody who feels like their back is against the wall to strike out at anyone who a dog does that, right?
Mhm.
They just strike out at anybody who they think that is against them and not in their best interest. So again, we see the deterioration of his mind. It's not just spiritual,
Mhm.
but just a total deterioration of his mind. That's why he's ranting and raving. That's why he that evil spirit that is with him is really working a number on him, and we see that right now.
Yeah, there's a parallel that I see with his behavior and Pharaoh, because Pharaoh kept getting told the same thing. But his anger and arrogance were so strong, he refused to believe what was to be inevitable. That's Saul, right? Saul refused to just let go and let God. People say that all the time in modern Christianity. He's not with them, right? Like his plan is another plan, right? There's another character, a spiritual being that we see with that same spirit. His name is Satan. That's why in the New Testament, when God is making an establishment, a real divide with humanity about us and them, right? A spirit of righteousness or a spirit of darkness, right? Fleshly minded or spiritually minded. That's why when you hear Christians, when we start talking about discernment and saying that somebody or a person or a group of people are operating on behalf of the devil, right? These are the things that we're talking about, because there's only two forms of thought process, good or evil. So you're either with God, which is righteousness, or your behavior is contrary to God. And Jesus said that type of behavior, that's similar to somebody who was a liar from the beginning, Satan, right? So we have to be careful, because that type of evilness can get inside of anybody, right? That's the whole point. So I like when Sister Nadine reminded us about the spirit. Remember this thing that got inside of him is just hatred. Pharaoh had the same thing. One minute Pharaoh would be like, okay, I'll let you guys go. Then he became so angry he refused to, right? So this is the same situation that we see. Question 9. How did Saul learn where David was? Right? Because at first when he came talking about the vineyards and the Benjamites, he didn't know where he was. So how did he find out where he was? This is verse 9. Oh boy, Doug, Doeg, right? There's a phrase that people say is snitches get stitches. How did Saul find out from Doeg where David was? What did Doeg or Doug or Dodo say?
He was there when David went to the priest Ahimelech and inquired about the food and the sword. He was there.
Okay, so now we see somebody who was paying attention that we didn't see a couple of weeks ago spelled out verbatim in the story. In verse 9, he said, what? I saw the son of Jesse going to Noab the Ahimelech, the son of Etub, and he inquired of the Lord for him, gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. So he just told the whole story, right? He was somebody who was witnessing what was going on, and he picked a side. His side was Saul's. So when Saul came inquiring, he spoke up first, and he told on David, and this whole situation went left. So it's no surprise to me as we get down to verse 18, when the servants wouldn't kill, that Saul, out of rage, a couple comments mentioned, looked to the guy who just told him everything he wanted to hear in the beginning anyway and said, you turn and kill the priest, right? And then it's no surprise to me that Doeg did what he said. And then look at this question 10. How would a priest inquire of the Lord as Ahimelech had for David? Two things. Let's look at Numbers 27, verse 21. Anyone who gets here first can read it. Number 27, verse 21.
He shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire before the Lord for him by the judgment of Urim. At his word they shall go out, and at his word they shall come in. He and all the children of Israel with him, all the congregation.
Okay, remember the whole purpose of the priest? There's multiple things. It's not just physical sacrifice or dressing a certain way. So when we read this, and reminded from Numbers, this also ties into, remember we were looking at last week or 2 weeks ago, the parallel verse about Jesus reminding his audience of this same situation with the showbread and all those sort of things when his disciples were eating during the Sabbath, right? This is the same thing. There were some things, just like with this story of Doeg, that we didn't realize reading in real time last week he was around. We also didn't dive in the last 2 weeks on the responsibility of the priest outside of just sacrifice. One of those responsibilities that Numbers reminds us of is this aspect of to be the liaison, right? This mediator between God and the people. You have the priest. Now, once we say that, our mind should be quickly reminded of Samuel, because that's what Samuel's been doing this whole time, right? Samuel is that mediator too. So when you start talking about going on behalf of, now put your mind all the way to Hebrews and Timothy, right? Hebrews talks about a high priest, right? In the order of Melchizedek, and is making a parallel between that and Jesus. Then we go to Timothy, and Paul is telling Timothy, remind the people that there's no more mediator between man and God except Jesus Christ. That's why Hebrews is saying the real high priest is Christ, because that being that will go on your behalf, that will make sacrifices for you, that will be the sacrifice for you, all of that embodiment that you as Jews remember from before is now spiritually fulfilled through Jesus Christ. So Timothy's audience must know, Jew or Greek alike, don't put your mind back to that old concept of this physical structure in terms of this Jewish religion and try to apply that in terms of church Christian structure, because Paul already gave Timothy and Titus how to establish church structure from local congregation to local congregation. So he's telling him, remind the people, there is no more mediator between God and man from another man, the Son of Man, right? Which is the Son of God, Jesus Christ. So this is just a tidbit to kind of expound upon that. And then question 11, describe the slaughter of the priest. How did David learn of it? What was his reaction? Verses 20 through 23. How did David react to this, and how did he learn about this? Verse 20, really.
His son, Ahitub, named Abiar, escaped and fled to join David and told him about it.
And David's response in 22, amazing. Somebody reread that verse.
And David said to Abiar that day, when the Edomite was there, I knew he would be sure to tell Saul, I am responsible for the death of your whole family. Stay,
you can finish it.
Stay with me, don't be afraid. The man who wants to kill you is trying to kill me too. You will be safe.
Okay, this And now it's implied, but since we talked about characteristics of Saul in 8, let's look at 11. What's the characteristics of David in this situation? Who did he blame for this? Doag or Doug or Dodo or who? Himself. He said what? I knew that guy was a snitch when I seen him. So he blamed me. I'm responsible for your family's death. Any thoughts on that? Because it's implied in this question, so we can spend some time.
I don't think it's just that he's saying that he was there and he seen and he was a snitch. I think it's also because he knew he lied. He lied to get the priest to do his bidding. He doesn't know if he would have done his bidding,
Yeah, he didn't give it a chance.
He didn't give it a chance. He lied. He told the priest that he was sent by Saul. And now knowing his relationship to Saul, knowing that Abimelech, he explained it when he defended himself, right? He's his son-in-law. He was by his side all this time. Why wouldn't he believe him and do whatever it is for him? So in that respect, he caused the death of the priest and everybody else. He lied, and his lies had consequences.
Yeah, when we look at this, remember last week, 2 comments had reminded us of Psalm 34 and 56. We don't have time to go back there, but that was giving us the mindset of David, right, during these times. And we look at this as he took responsibility for his actions because cause and effect. I wish people did this more. People wake up in a situation and be like, wow, I don't know how I got here. Really? Because if you just thought about what you said and did yesterday and the day before that and the day before that, could it be that somebody reacted to how you started? Could be, right? But too often we just say, oh, woe is me. I don't know how I got in this situation. Everybody is against me. People are crazy. Well, it's true. People are crazy, but you are people as well. So when we look at this from that standpoint, David doesn't spend time trying to decipher anything that I feel like most of us would have reacted in this situation as. He goes the opposite way, and as soon as he hears about it, he blames himself. So he takes responsibility, and he looks at it, the whole situation is, I seen him, right? He didn't say, like, who was it? I never heard him. I remember seeing him, and then we're talking about his mindset from this Psalm 34 and 56, that God delivered him from those situations out of fear, out of anxiety, out of distress. But now we're looking at it, and this question 11 is, what method did David put on the path to get out of this situation in the immediate? And somebody last week had started us down this discussion about deception, right? So when we look at it from that standpoint, there is another way that David could have went about this, but he didn't give it a chance. Now, the ultimate way, this is the benefit of knowing this story of David, right? This goes into our concept of, in the New Testament, Bible telling us there's always a way out of sin, right? There's always an exit. When we look at this story, we know that David is anointed to be king. You can't be dead and anointed to be king, right? So we know that no matter what situation David is in, we as the readers, we know that ultimately it was God's will that he would become king, and he would be king because God's word can't come back to the void. That means as readers, as a Bible study, we know that every single situation that David is in that we have read or will read up until that point, there was another way to do it better. When we look at our own lives, we have to know and think that same thing. That's why I say all the time is, this is a mindset that some people have. Some people have the mindset that whatever happened, happened, and that led me to who I am today. Yes, and that's bad. Because you could have been a better person than you are today. See, break your mind of just que sera, sera. Like, I can't control the past. You're right, but you can learn from it. Because that mindset, you know what it does? It eliminates any involvement of yourself in the situation. Right? It's a lot easier to say, hey, whatever happened, happened. I was upset. I reacted this way. Accept me for who I am, flaws and all these statements that people give. But when we look at that same mindset, let's look at it from the story of David. As Bible readers, we know there's no way that you could be dead and be a future king. How is that possible? So we know that every situation, even the situations he did good, the situations he did some good and some bad, or the situations he did all bad, there was a more perfect way. Another example would be Abraham, right? They went about it, him and his wife, a whole nother way about having a kid that God never, ever, ever said. As the Bible readers, we knew that was a bad idea. But in the moment, the two of them justified their actions, right? Christians have to stop doing that. Too many times we justify the wrong that we do, our family do, the congregation do, because we feel there's no other way. You have to literally let that spirit go, right? Because you have to admit that wrong is wrong, even when you do it. Now, that's tough. Some of us, that personality is already in us. We're David, right? Hey, this was wrong. I should have did better. I'm responsible. Some of us would have never got to this verse. We would have blamed every person under the sun instead of analyzing ourselves to say, is there a different way that I could have done that, right? When we go into the New Testament, this is why I try to implore us in study, start working on your personality. Christians always telling me about a physical sin like fornicating or why don't I hear enough people talking about personality sins, like being rude, like not being responsible, like forgetting to be a man or a woman of your word. See, because those are the things that you chalk up as, this is who I am. Like people who are always late say, I always been late. I was late coming here. I was supposed to be due on this day. And that is just chalking it up to accept me for who I am. But in the world of responsibilities, maybe you should work on it. See, we always like to fixate on things that we have already conquered or not doing. That's the plank in the speck. Spend more time in the concept of Galatians. Let's put off the old way, right? That was behavioral things as well, and put on a new way. Christ is transformative. I came to give life and life more abundantly. Some of that more life is to change each and every one of us how we are. That's why I say you shouldn't be thinking this is who I am, accept me for who I am. No Christian should have that mindset, because God said, behold, I make what? All things new. Right? Psalmist said, whoa, you're new every morning. So God is looking to make a new thing in us. That's why a lot of times in relationships, they fail. Because people want to bring, person A bring their baggage, person B bring their baggage. But in my Bible, it says that a man should leave his mother and father, and the two should become what? Not 11. 11 is 2 ones. So the relationship has to make something new. Oh, goodness. So some of the things you used to do, you cannot do anymore in a relationship. So that's why relationships fail. Because some people say, oh, that's not the type of relationship that I wanted to have. Oh, well, how are you going to make something one and make a new thing? Each person got to leave their family to make a new family. These are the things that people go into situations not evaluating and not being on the same page. Hey, are you willing to make a new thing? Sometimes your baggage won't allow you to make a new thing. See, that's why God says you need to live the way I said, because when 2 people start messing up their lives and they go on to other people, they're going to bring that baggage. Well, people don't believe that. So God let us live the way we want to live. Look at Abraham, Sarah, Ishmael, and that whole Hagar, that whole situation. Oh, yeah, we see that was a lot of baggage. Wow. So when we look at these things, we have to apply this to how we think. Every day you get up, you are who you are. Try to think different. Start in the morning. Try to react differently. Try to respond differently. Try to speak differently. Try to live differently every single day, right? If you notice, man, in the last several days or weeks, people have been saying the same thing to me. You need to try a different way. Maybe that's God trying to come to you to be like, hey, remember Sunday when you read about David? Look at David's response, right? Okay, well, some of us, if we were to raise our hand, hey, will we ever respond like David? No. Okay. Remember, as a Bible student, I already told you that David was a man after my own heart. Maybe there's characteristics of David's life in Bible study that we need to apply in our life. Maybe that's some of the things that God is looking for us to grab. So those are concepts that we have to go into each day saying, yes, I am who I am. I have talents, I have abilities and all these things, but I do have areas of improvement. That's why I say all the time, people say, oh, just be yourself. Being yourself got you to September 29th. But what if being more like David gets you to a better October? See, I don't see anywhere in my New Testament say be myself. How y'all know who I really want to be? Don't tell me be myself. People always say, if you're shy, let's talk about business, you never will survive. You're never going to get a raise. You never will be recognized. You're going to be doing $1 million work for pennies. And you're going to say, oh, God will take care of me. That's shy people. Bold people have no talent and they get all the raise. You know why? Because they're not shy. Squeaky wheel get the oil. I'm not finna check wheels that's not squeaking. That's extra work for me. Hey, this hinge is making noise. So I'm going to spray some WD-40 on it. I'm not going through the whole house to be like, well, let me check all the hinges. When they start squeaking, then I'll spray them. See? That's how financial world works. In a spiritual setting, there are characteristics about yourself that you have. Some of them are based on the two people that created you. Some of them are based on your circumstances. Some of them are based on how you were raised. But God is giving you opportunity to say, listen, some of the physical and emotional things about you, you need to work on to be better for you. I didn't put those things inside of you. God said, I gave you a spirit of boldness, not timidity. So those of us who are shy, you have to understand there's a time for shyness, but there's a time to lay that aside. Oh, well, I'm always shy. Okay, sweetheart, then we missing verses because that's not going to work. I'm always late. I'm always rude. I'm always loud. Some of us never learn to be quiet. Man, two people talking. Why do we need to hear you talking? That's a third person. What you got to say is not that important. Oh, I'm always like that. Yes, and you always annoying. Why do we do that? We don't care how you always were. We don't like it. Only people put up with that is your parents. See, work to be better. Maybe nobody exposed these things in your life. You look at it and say, oh, okay, wow, I never seen it that way. Yes, out of love, we're trying to help you. These are things that you can glean from a study. These are the things that the world missed. Because when they just read at surface level. But the topic is obedience, learning to follow God's principles. That's why I wanted to spend some time on this, because it's easy to just go through surface level, and there's a lesson there. We spent time the first half of the class looking at the surface level of each verse, but I just wanted to circle back to talking about it conceptually. Yes, sister.
So, even though David took responsibility, Doeg does need to be discussed, I think, because he only spoke up when the king talked about, hey, riches and all that kind of stuff. So it seemed like he's motivated also by riches. And then when everybody else refused to kill the priest, he did. It seemed without hesitation. So he seems to me to be one of those people who run to evil. David did write a song that they attributed to this period in Psalm 52. And it talks about people who boast in evil and run towards doing things like that, deceitful tongue, etc. And I think this is Doeg. He didn't have to do what he did. Even if he did say where David was, he didn't have to kill the priest. He just seemed very eager to me to do something like that. So it means to me that he also was an evil, similar to Saul.
Yeah, it seemed like this is when we started talking about seeing somebody for their true color. It looked like he always wanted to be like this. This was just opportunity for him to act like he wanted to act, right? Because when he's heard money, then he was, hey, what you got to say? Look, I'll tell you everything. I seen him. He went here. Amalek, he did this. When it's saying that I need someone to kill them, hey, look, I'll help. I'll kill them, right? It looked like that in him, right, characteristics, I agree. Third major character in this story, we looked at Saul's characteristics, David's characteristic, and now this guy, Doeg's characteristics, they were not of purity, right? They were not of helping. They were not a peacemaker. It was about being a busybody. And Lord knows that in today's concept of living, especially with social media, some of us can't take a first breath without being a busybody. Why does it matter? Why does it matter somebody else's business to you? Somebody name always in your mouth. I never understood that. People in church do that. You can't even give God praise without somebody else's name inside of your mouth. What? Listen, I have enough problems in my own personage. I don't have time to worry about even what celebrities are doing. Why do I care? Why do I care? What does that do? That pay bills? I always wonder, people who gossip, do that pay your bills? Any bill get paid by doing that? No, right? Any weight get lost by gossiping? No, right? What benefit do you get from that? So when we look at this concept look at this Psalm 52, or just conceptually, wow, what benefit you get from being that type of person? Right? Like you in someone else's business, which ultimately this was God's business, because I don't see anybody consulting God in this 6 through 23. Maybe let's ask what he have to say about it. No, God, I'm Saul. I got the better way. So when we look at this from this concept, there's so many practical Christian lifestyle applications we can make. Yes.
In churches, we will see each other's weaknesses. And as a Christian sister or brother, and you see that was the fault, instead of going to somebody else and deliver that message, what you should do, pray for that person. And I think that way it will prevent gossip. You know, you pray. I am not perfect. Definitely I'm not. But I make it my business. I pray and I fast for the church. For each and every one. Look at my fingers. All is not the same length. But I can hold something with one hand, or maybe two hands. Okay? And this is what we should be doing. Not going around and gossiping, you know this and you know that, or whatever it is. We all have our weaknesses. And when we observe somebody's weaknesses, because not everybody you would want to talk to, because who is you to tell me this and tell me that? You go and you pray. You pray for that person. You pray for the church. You pray for the deacon, the elders, the preachers, the teachers. Keep them up in prayer instead of putting them down.
Yeah.
That is my way of thinking.
Yeah, the Bible talks about that, right? Prayer of the righteous availeth much, right? So when we look at that, going to God in prayer is important because, yes, I agree. Just like in a physical family, each family member knows every family's member's strengths and weaknesses. You even know your pet's strengths and weaknesses, right? So even a baby who just got in the house can know quickly, I know who to cry to quick, because some people I cry to will let me just sit here in a dirty diaper, so they're not going to help me. Babies understand that. We have to have this mindset of, let's go to God, right? Let me go to God and pray that people will be able to turn weaknesses into strengths. And then the flip side of that comment is each and every one of us, we need to be open to advice. Homeless person on the street could give you advice. You ever been walking by somebody, something, maybe you didn't hear them or notice them, and they said something about you, right? And you got to respond that way. That's maybe advice. What if God is speaking to you through that person? Homeless. Somebody drunk on drugs could say something to you about you, out of their mind. But we don't want to accept advice. If you can't accept Christian advice from the people in this room, you're doomed. Because none of your friends know you like that. What are you talking about? People love going to friends for advice. You broke and the friend broke. That's broke advice. What advice can you get from a broke friend about not being broke? Right? You eating at the buffet, the other person eating at the buffet. What are y'all talking about eating healthy? There's this guy at work. He the biggest one out of all of us be telling me about eating healthy. What are you talking about, bro? You 3 times my size. My doctor don't be confirming what you telling me about me. But you must be eating a lot of healthy things because it just don't visibly add up. And he be talking like if you close your eyes, you think he's skinnier than me. I don't understand that. We have to be open to hear someone tap us on the shoulder and say, there was a better way to be that situation. right? I'm just outside looking in, right? I don't have a dog in the fight. I just was, as your brother or sister, looking in. If somebody talks to you in church about your finances, about parenting, about your relationship with God or family members, about you being a better person, that's just outside looking in. We didn't have to say nothing to you. We could have let you keep acting how you act, and I could have went on acting like how I'm acting. God, is that impacting my Christianity? No. Not going to stop me from going to heaven. I'm just trying to help you. I seen you fall. All I did was try to help you up, and you biting my head off. You know what I'm saying? Stay on the floor then, because I'm not on the ground. So we have to be better with that. Sometimes we are too thin-skinned, right? Sometimes, yes, people are rude to us in church, but sometimes people are not rude to you. You go and tell people somebody was rude to you. Then I say, what did they say? And I said, kind of sound they was helping you, no? Where was the lie though? Right? So when we look at that, what her comment was, two things. Let's go to God for prayer to help us, right? Because as a congregation, right, we're only as strongest as our weakest member, our newest person, right? If our newest person, I say this to the men, if the newest person don't understand, no one understands the Bible study. So don't be talking way up here. People be having, we shouldn't teach this. If the newest person couldn't tell me the Old Testament, we need to do sermon. Oh no, a lot of people came from Trumbull. They know it already. The newest person though, do they know this? No, right? That's why in plant work, we do things different than established work because we are dispersed. Are we in some physical location? No. So newest person, each one of us is advertising for the church. So when we look at her concept of a hand turning into a fist, each person plays a role. So we have to move as a group. So I encourage us as the ending comment is to move into this week, those two things. Either look for God's advice in your life, the people that you interact with. God is speaking. And also look to lift each and every one of us up as a congregation in prayer. Okay, we're over time. Next week, we will go into this chapter 23. And right now, we'll have a quick prayer and we'll transition into worship. Thanks for everyone's comments and those who are Bible readers. Let's go to God in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful and blessed day. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to study a portion of your word about obedience and following your lifestyle concepts for us. Thank you for this story of David and Doeg and Saul as we were able to see some characteristics in ourselves and others, but ultimately characteristics of you and characteristics of sin. And we are happy that we had the discernment to decipher through those. We pray that we can apply this study to our lives today and the rest of this week, if you allow us to live, so that we can continue to be better Christians, both male and female. As we transition into worship, please be with those who are traveling at this time without the loss or harm of any. Guide, guard, and keep us in all things. And we pray that our worship service be presented up to you, a sweet smelling aroma in thy throne room. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, for the brothers who are baptized, if you can just go out to the left, our left, when we walk out, we'll have a quick prayer, and then we'll begin our worship service.